Hello everyone, it's your real life dad, Radical Pubes, here back at producing the top tier motorcycle content you've come to know and expect. I heard you like motorcycles. More specifically, I heard you like sport bikes. High revving, wheelie popping, badass machines that make women and children tremble with fear as you pull up to a gas station smelling worse than a 10-gallon jug of gooch juice. If you spent any time on this channel, you know we espouse the good word of our Lord and Savior Rossi, but we also do quite a bit is spend time championing the mighty naked bike. And today we're going to rank the top 10 greatest naked sport bikes of all time, and I do mean that quite literally. This is going to be an ordered ranking of the finest naked bikes ever produced, so stick around for number one because that'll be my opinion of the greatest one. And of course, this video wouldn't be possible without the support from our members on YammieNoob.co. I will tell you guys more about that later in the video, but do check the link down below to see how you can sign up and support and even win some free motorcycles. Let's set up some ground rules before jumping in. A naked sport bike is actually a relatively new concept because, to be honest, when bikes first came around, everything was naked because all bikes didn't have plastic fairings. Think back to the original Triumph Bonnevilles, the Harley Davidsons of years past and current, they're all technically naked. So for this video, we're focusing primarily on sport bikes that are naked and built after the year 1990, because otherwise it starts to get really messy about what exactly is a naked sport bike. It's also important to remember that up until very recently, naked bikes were thought of as the boring, sensible option to your fully faired crotch rocket, so the idea of a face-melting naked bike is actually pretty new. However, sport bike squids have been making their own backyard nakeds from crashed race replicas for decades now, and even launched the stunt scene as well. They're extremely important to the mythos of motorcycling, which means we must understand them in an ordered list to be featured on this channel. So smash the subscribe button, grab your favorite snack, and let's chat about some bikes. The first bike I want to discuss at number 10 on this list is the Honda CB750. Now, I know we said we're looking at bikes made after 1990, however, to set the tone of this video and to understand it better, I thought it'd be important to include the Honda CB750. This bike was a complete game changer and set the tone for nearly all of modern sport motorcycling for decades to come, and it's easy to see why. When it was released in 1969, it featured a transverse inline 4-cylinder with an overhead cam, a disc brake up front, and a standard upright riding position. This is the platform upon which nearly all sport motorcycles have been built upon. Hell, even Honda themselves had iterated upon the CB in nearly every configuration you can possibly think of. The CB line of bikes helps you understand the tone of a naked sport bike, and my pick for one of the best of the bunch is the second generation CB900F, or as many of you know it from this channel, the Hentai Hornet. Why did I wrap a crusty CB900F in Hagao faces and spend nearly $10,000 fixing it up and then giving it away for free? Well, it's because I'm a degenerate who has completely lost his grip on reality, but that's life. The CB750 is an honorary number 10 on this list, and the CB900F is the official number 10. Before moving on to our number 9, let's hear how she sounds, and lucky for you, Spite owned one, so Spite, edit in a Lopey clip of your 919 for all of us to hear. Now, all of you are aware that I am quite partial to Hayabusas. Do I love them ironically, unironically? Who can say? A little of column A, a little of column B. What you might not know is the absolute mad lads over at Suzuki produced a naked version of the Hayabusa for a short period of time, and that bike was known as the Suzuki B-King, and it is number 9 on today's list. The Suzuki B-King is absolutely crazy. It features a Gen 2 Hayabusa engine with 1340 cc's of face-melting torque and about 180 horsepower. Even though Suzuki pulled this bike from production just after 1 year due to slumping sales, I blame this on a variety of factors. Number 1, Suzuki was early to the hyper-naked party, and number 2, if you were born after the year 1996, you're probably old enough to remember the cataclysmic effects of the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Looking back in hindsight with 2020 vision, get it? Get it? The sport bike market was eviscerated during this time as people tightened the belt to ride out the storm, and frivolous naked bikes with 180 horsepower were not particularly important to the basket of goods that economists used to measure the CPI. Which is a shame, because if Suzuki had waited, this could have been the shot in the arm the industry needed that other manufacturers took advantage of years later, and those bikes are featured on this list. The B-King is a very rare and interesting naked bike that to me is one of the first versions of the hyper nakeds we see today. Oh yeah, and in case you aren't convinced, Suzuki originally released the concept to this bike in 2001 with a goddamn supercharger slapped onto it. So basically, they had the idea for a ZH2 20 years before it was even convinced. Eat your heart out, Kawasaki. Let's get a sound check on this beast. The next bike is one you've probably not heard about, but to me it is well deserved, and it is the K1200R from BMW. The BMW K1200R is a curious motorcycle. One look at the front suspension tells you it is not your normal everyday bike. Debuting in 2005 with an 1152cc inline 4-cylinder making a claimed 163 horsepower, the BMW was the world's fastest naked bike until the B-King was released. Now you might be confused if you know about BMW's current lineup because this K series is not the full dress cruisers that compete with Goldwing and the GT version or some enormous sport touring thing, but in 2005 this bike was nothing like those two things. This was, in my opinion, the world's first open class hyper naked. It had rider modes, adjustable electronic suspension, and all kinds of goodies back in 2005 when most leader bikes came with a cable actuated throttle and the rider aids amounted to the manual telling you to not yeet yourself off of a cliff. The K1200R is a sleeper hit that was only released for a few years, but should definitely not be overlooked as one of the most important naked bikes, even if it did morph into a weird cruiser and sport touring machine. Here's a sound clip of the Beamer. Now the next one on our list is the most modern bike, but it's simply here for the performance, sense of exoticism, the cool factor, and it is none other than the Aprilia Tuono 1100 V4 Factory. It's a long name. Now why did I choose the original Aprilia as opposed to the original one based off of the RSV Mille? Simply put, the Aprilia Tuono is naked bike perfection. It's the idea that iteration, progress, and long-term success means building a better and better motorcycle. Reviewers have gone absolutely crazy and gushed over this motorcycle, with Michael Neves from MCN going as far as saying it is the best road-going sport bike ever built. And I believe that. With 1077cc V4 pushing 175 horsepower, it is a true sport bike with upright bars. And honestly, it takes the ethos of the naked bike to its logical extreme and causes the Aprilia to exist in a liminal space. With a frame derived from a world-class superbike, razor-sharp handling, and an engine that is simply to die for, what more could you want from a motorcycle that's designed to go fast and take you to go get groceries as well? Should your pleasures be more manic and masochistic, you could always swing for an RSV4, but why would you when the Aprilia offers so much and takes so little? The Tuono earns a well-deserved number 7 on my list of the most important naked bikes of all time simply because of how good it is. And if that's not enough to convince you, well, maybe you need a sound check of the world's greatest engines shooting some flames. The next bike on our list might be a little controversial since we just mentioned that the Aprilia earned its place despite being a brand new bike, but I do think the KTM Super Duke deserves to be exactly one slot higher. The Super Duke is what happens when engineers say, what if we took a road-going borderline supermoto/enduro platform and put an absolutely gigantic engine in it and made it do power wheelies in 4th gear because of how much torque it has? That's what the Super Duke did. Released in 2014, I truly believe the Super Duke set the tone for the insanity that followed in the mid-2000s of naked bikes. The 1301cc V-twin LC8 engine was derived from the now defunct RC8R and is an absolute torque monster. People could scarcely believe how much grunt and sheer muscle this bike had, and other manufacturers took notice. Once the Super Duke was released, the other motorcycle manufacturers were starting to wonder just how wide of a demographic these bikes appeal to, and it turns out it was quite wide. In my opinion, for the time it came out and the sort of bike it was, the Super Duke was in a class of its own and it set the stage for what we see in the naked bike market today. And of course, I can't let you leave without a quick sound check of the bike. Number 5, and rounding out the bottom 50th percentile of this list, is none other than the Yamaha FZ1. Sacrilege! Heresy! Only a rube with a dubious sense of motorcycling would place an FZ1 over other motorcycles, but listen, the FZ1 is a gem of a bike, and there's many reasons why it's number 5. The FZ1, or the Phaser 1, comes in a line of motorcycles Yamaha made back in the mid-2000s known as the Phaser line. They were what we used to think of as traditional naked bikes, lazy, sensible versions of their hopped-up super sport and superbike cousins. However, the FZ1 was a little bit different. Here was a bike that was based on the second generation R1, featured an inline 4-cylinder engine that punched a respectable 150 horsepower, and really resembled more of what we think of naked bikes today than anything else at the time. Even though the first generation looks a little bit square by today's standards, the FZ1 was a blast to ride. It had the true dual nature of a naked in that you could ride it to work and enjoy it, but also carve up your favorite twisty road with your friends. A common mod to the FZ1 is to swap it in the Euro spec headlight, which in my opinion makes it much more modern and cool looking. It's an important naked bike and rightfully deserves its number 5 spot on today's list. Let's get a sound check of that superbike engine. Alright guys, we're in the top half now, and starting on number 4 in terms of the greatest naked sport bikes of all times, in terms of importance and in my own opinion, remember, is the Yamaha MT-09. What? Another Yamaha? Unbelievable. I bet this guy either put a Yamaha or a Triumph at the top of the list, but stick around and you might be surprised by number 1 and number 2. The MT-09, or the FZ-09 as it used to be known here in the States, is a genre-defining motorcycle and an inflection point when it debuted in 2014. This was an oversized middleweight bike from Japan that features an 847cc triple cylinder with gobs of torque, and it came in at a ludicrously cheap price. To the surprise of no one, Yamaha sold FZ-09s by the absolute metric butt ton. That is a scientific measurement, I'll have you know. The MT-09 platform has morphed over time, becoming the XSR 900, the MT-09 SP for the second generation, powers the Tracer 900, and even the 3-wheeled Nikon. However, the first generation FZ-09 with its sloppy, barely adjustable suspension, insane wheelie potential, and a barely controllable throttle is a truly important point for motorcycling. The MT-09 launched an entire genre of squid, and it made Japanese motorcycle lovers finally realize what Triumph fanboys knew all along, that the triple cylinder is God. Let's get a sound check for the MT-09. Number 3 on this list might shock you if you've been watching my channel for a while, but it goes none other than the Triumph Speed Triple. Yes, even me as a fanboy of Triumph sport motorcycles cannot in good faith put it as the most important naked bike of all time. Although I am a bigger fan of the newer Triumph Street Triples, the Speed Triple stands as the bike that came well before its time. The 1994 original model was powered by an 885cc triple and was a bike that was one of the first to try to capture the crashed racer replica look from the factory as a deliberate marketing attempt. Ask any naked bike lover and the Street Triple is likely to be high on the list. However, the Street Triple was only released in 2006 as a naked companion to the new first generation Triumph Daytona 675. Now, I think the Street Triple is the proper iteration of the Triumph 3-cylinder sport bike and the better buy, but so many naked bikes simply wouldn't exist if it weren't for the Speed Triple from 1994. You might be wondering why I'm so partial to the Street Triple as well, and it's because I'm actually giving one away for free. If you click the link down below to YammieNoob.co, you can sign up to support what we do here on this channel and get entered to win free motorcycles. Join our Discord server, which is one of the best communities of motorcyclists on the internet. If you love our daily content and want to support what we do, consider signing up, and hey, you might get a free bike just like 8 other people have. Let's listen to the classic sounds of the 1994 Speed Triple. We've almost gotten to the end of our list here, and number 2 is one you might not have expected from me because I don't mention it much on my channel, but the spot for second most important naked bike of all time is the original Ducati Monster. Now, I want to set the scene for you. The year is 1993, Ducati's making bikes like the gorgeous 916, partnering with the likes of Ayrton Senna to make special editions. and leaning into their perceived premium brand identity. Then all of a sudden, they launched this bare-bones, simple, trellis-framed, barely finished-looking road-going bike called the Ducati Monster. The motorcycling world was really turned on its head. Keep in mind, the idea of a slightly upright twin-cylinder naked bike seems like the most commonplace thing to us nowadays, but when it came out, this bike caused quite a stir. It used the air-cooled engine taken from the 900 SS sport bike and the frame from the 851. It was, in the truest sense, a hodgepodge bike designed for street use. The concept of a twin-cylinder engine with the middleweight displacement, easygoing ergonomics, exposed engine and frame would truly set the tone for all of their nakeds to come. So why didn't I place it as number 1? Well, it's because it was a Ducati. It was still inaccessible to some folks despite the relatively easygoing price tag from the factory, and 6 years later, the world's most important naked bike would come knocking on its door with a familiar but better formula. Before we see number 1, let's get a sound check on the 1993 Ducati Monster. Now, as much as I'd love to draw this out, this video is already getting quite long, so the number 1 spot of the most important and significant naked sport bike of all time goes to none other than the Suzuki SV650. This motorcycle has been sold to millions of folks brand new, handed down to many more and their families, resold and modified and enjoyed on the aftermarket, and beloved by probably tens of millions of people around the world. The SV650 is not only one of the best middleweight starter motorcycles with its punchy V-twin engine, it also holds a spot for being the bike the Ducati Monster wanted to be. It was cheaper, liquid-cooled, more reliable, and it came out in 1999. Seriously, the first SV650 rolled onto dealerships' floors as people were listening to Backstreet Boys, long before Yamaha and Kawasaki were making their own copies and versions of it. I can't think of another bike that has had more of an impact on this market, caused more people to get involved with motorcycling, has been raced in amateur and club racing all over the world, and generally is thought of as the defining naked motorcycle of our time. Even though Suzuki sold it as a fully fared version and bungled it with the second generation Gladius, the first generation SV650 is a bike that can do no wrong in my opinion, and stands atop the naked bike mountain as the most important and significant naked bike ever built. And to round off today's video, let's hear how the SV650 sounds, because I owned one last year and gave it away. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up today's video with what I consider to be the greatest naked sport bikes of all time. What do you think? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Lucky for you, YouTube has a neat feature where you can tap away and write into the void and voice your opinions, where I try my best to read all of your comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what we do here, consider supporting us over on YammieNoob.co. It is the reason we get to give away cool motorcycles, make almost daily videos, and provide you guys with the best community for motorcyclists on the internet. Thanks again for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I hope I'll catch you on the next one. Fact: according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the octo prefix refers to the 8 points on the popular symbol of the hashtag, but the thorp remains a mystery. One theory claims that this word octothorpe comes from the Old English word for village, based on the idea that the symbol looks like a village surrounded by 8 fields. Goodbye.